Cool. So hey everybody, welcome to ARE Live. I'm Mark Tier, the founder of Black Spectacles, and today we're going to be speaking with some architects who recently passed their exams. And we're going to ask them all sorts of questions about the things they've done after they passed their exams, to how they organize and plan them. So it should be really interesting. I feel like you're probably going to learn a ton. Before we get started though, if you'd like to attend our next ARE Live broadcast, where we'll focus on the Programming and Analysis mock exam for ARE 5.0, visit blackspectacles.com/podcast to register. And during the broadcast, you'll have a chance to ask questions to the group and to Mike Newman, who'll be joining us as well. As you guys probably know, here at Black Spectacles, we have built a comprehensive ARE 4 and 5 exam curricula that you can utilize. And I often like to remind folks that if you'd like your boss to pay for your Black Spectacles membership, be sure to tell them about our firm licenses for any size firm. Whether you work at a 10-person or a 10,000-person firm, we have firm licenses that give multiple users access, a group admin, reporting, all that good stuff. So if you're interested in that, you can visit blackspectacles.com/firms to learn more about that. And then today, as usual, we have a special discount on Black Spectacles individual memberships to share at the end of the broadcast too. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Today, our three guests here are Jonathan Stiles, who's a project architect at Piper O'Brien Herr Architects in Alpharetta, Georgia, which is just outside of Atlanta. Isn't that right, Jonathan?
That's correct.
Awesome. And then we have Jake Elliott, who is a senior designer at Lionakis, which is in Sacramento, California, who probably has much better weather than we have here in Chicago. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Awesome. And Debbie Bird, who's an architect at Keys Architects and Associates in Louisville, Kentucky. Debbie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Awesome. So today, just so everybody knows, we'll be taking questions using the GoToWebinar question box, as well as on Twitter using the ARE Live podcast hashtag. I want to thank everybody who's already posted a couple of questions, which are really, really useful. We'll try to bring those in here as we go along. And just so you guys know, we always record this and make it available as a podcast and as a webinar, as a video for folks to listen to afterwards. So we get that question a lot. So just so you know. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So let's jump in here. We'll do our first question. And Jonathan, maybe I'll let you start here. Can you talk a little bit about exam timing, your schedule, and how did you sort of buy and schedule the exams? Did you do them kind of 1 month at a time? Did you buy them all at once? Talk a little bit about your approach to that.
Yeah, sure. So what I did was I kind of evaluated each exam, determining, how hard I think it would be. And so I would schedule it accordingly. So I would allot myself, let's say, for programming, planning, and practice, let's say. So I would say, okay, I think this exam, I can pretty much schedule about 4 weeks for it. And so what I did was I would break it up to where I would take the last week of that chunk as my review week. And then I would divvy up the other 3 weeks by percentages based upon how the exam was broken up according to the NCARB guidelines.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so did you say you focused on the hardest exams first?
Oh, no. Basically, I kind of evaluated each exam and thinking about how hard it was going to be, how I'm familiar with the material, and then I kind of do the time accordingly. So I basically started with schematic design first as kind of a introduction to the whole testing format, and work my way from there.
Okay, and then did you sort of follow any kind of schedule, like you always gave yourself a month, or did you just kind of play it by ear? And then how long did it take you to ultimately pass all the exams?
Right, I gave myself between 4 and 6 weeks, depending on the exam material and how comfortable I was with it. And that's how I scheduled it. And basically my whole process, it took about a year and 8 months to do. So again, 4 to 6 weeks per exam, and then you allot some time in there for vacations happen, life happens, and that kind of thing. But overall, it took me about a year and 8 months.
Okay, Cool. Jake, tell me about your approach. What was your exam timing schedule?
Yeah, I think using that last week for review is key. I usually spent about 4 to 6 weeks as well, and it kind of varied depending on the test. Like I didn't feel comfortable um, scheduling 4 weeks for structures or systems because it was a little bit more foreign. But I think that's a good timeline. You don't want to spend too long because you can kind of get sidetracked easier.
Hmm.
And it's just easier to stay focused if you just keep it brief. Um, and one thing that some of my peers did was we would always take 1 week break in between exams,
Hmm.
and so that helped you get a breath of fresh air. But then also, you're not taking a step back for too long, and then you got to get back into the groove. So that was a good time. So during my week break, I would always schedule my next exam towards the end of that week for about 4 to 6 weeks for the next one.
Okay, and how long did it take you to get through? And did you do ARE 4 or 5?
I did all four. It took me about a little over a year. I went through the first six in about 8 months, and then my girlfriend and I bought a house, so we took about a 6 month break before I took structures, which I kind of regret taking that one last, but I got through it.
Cool. And Jonathan, were you in ARE 4 or ARE 5?
I was 4.0.
4.0. Okay, cool. Debbie, tell me about your approach.
Well, I did the transition. So I started in 4 and ended in 5.
Mm-hmm.
I usually tried to schedule the test when I felt I only had about 2 weeks worth of studying left. So I might have studied for 2 or 3 weeks already, but I kind of wanted to know that I generally grasped the information before I scheduled it. I have 3 young kids and life's pretty busy, so I didn't want to schedule it and then find out some crazy thing happened and I wasn't ready. So I gave myself, 2 weeks ahead of time to get it scheduled and be all ready for it. And then those 2 weeks were finishing up studying and then reviewing. And then at the end, I had to wait for 5.0 to come out because I had gotten the 3 done. The first 3 I got done in probably about 6 months, and then I had to wait a few months for 5.0 to come out. And then I took both of those within a month of 5.0 being released.
Okay, and how long did it take you to finish the whole process?
Start to finish, I think it was 13 months.
13 months. All right, so we're seeing some consistency here. A little more than a year in all cases here. I don't think I got that question from Jake or Jonathan. Maybe I'll ask you, Jake. How did you, I guess, buy the exams? Did you, kind of buy them, all 6 of those up front or sort of as you went?
So the firm Line Office that I work for, they pay for exams when you pass. So during that break week, I would purchase them individually, but I would wait till the end of my break week to buy them, and then I'd be reimbursed around that time for the previous exam. So that's kind of how I did it on a single exam basis.
Okay, so you'd buy them right here, sort of in that break week between exams. Okay, and how about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, very similar. Our firm also reimburses us for exams when we pass, and so I would schedule and purchase my exam week 1 of my study period, and then once I got that pass letter or email, I would take it down and submit it for reimbursement.
Okay, gotcha. Beautiful. All right, so then let's move on to our next question here. I think in all these cases, a year and a half roughly is sort of the time frame here. Now it's 6 exams. Of course, ARE 4.0 is 7 exams. You could conceivably take them. I've heard people take them 1 week apart, 2 weeks apart, 1 month apart. What, Debbie, has held you back from taking those, or had held you back from taking those exams even faster?
Well, the biggest break was definitely waiting for the 5.0 to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other things that held me back was after I I was in the middle of moving from Virginia to Kentucky around the time that I started testing, and I was living with my parents for the transition for a few months and commuting 3 hours a day into work. So I would have gone a little bit faster, but it was pretty hard to get all of the studying done in with the move.
Yeah. So life kind of got in the way a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Jake?
I think 4 to 6 weeks was pretty good timing. I wouldn't want to push myself too much faster. I think for schematic design, I only took 2 weeks or a week and a half for that one, just because it was a vignette only, and it was during the holidays, so I just wanted to knock it out for Christmas. So I think 4 to 6 is pretty quick. You can get them done in a year.
Okay. So you'd argue that was just fast enough. Okay. Jonathan, how about you?
Yeah, the whole 4 to 6 week thing to me just seemed like it was a very manageable pace, because I didn't want to necessarily rush too quickly through the material, because one, obviously you want to have a good grasp on it, but two, if you failed the exam, you wouldn't be reimbursed for that. So if you're going to go in and make the financial commitment to take the exam, you want to make sure that you gave yourself the best possible chance of passing. And 4 to 6 weeks to me seemed to be a very comfortable threshold. But me taking about a year and 8 months to get through it was a series of life events. Whether again it was a vacation, I have a long commute as well. So there again, the study hours weren't necessarily as much as I would like for them to have been per week, and some other things as well. So that tend to pop up.
Yeah, I guess I wonder, not knowing everyone's sort of stage in life, I wonder, does anyone wish they would have taken the exams earlier? And I'll let you guys just sort of speak up if you do.
And by that, I'm
definitely
sorry,
wish I had,
earlier sort of in your career. Sorry, Debbie, I cut you off.
I wish I had taken them earlier. My original plan was to take them during my maternity break with my first child, and that didn't really work out.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have 3 kids working full time, and I have a side job where I'm a portrait painter.
Oh, man.
And somehow there's so much more time in the day now.
That's awesome.
Anyone else? Jake, Jonathan?
Well, for me, I started taking my exams only having 1 year experience.
Okay.
There's not really much there's not really much earlier you can take it, than that. So.
Yeah, that's pretty aggressive.
No kidding. That's awesome.
I think it's nice to take them early because you really learn a lot just studying for the exams. I think I waited about 2 years before I started testing, and that was good because I didn't have too much real world experience to cloud what I thought NCARB was looking for on the questions. So I think 1 to 2 years if you can. Obviously, you're gonna have less potential for life issues to come in the way with scheduling. So you get busier as you get older, more into your career. So just get it done early if you can.
Yeah. Debbie, how far along in your career were you when you took them?
I had worked 6 years, and then I took off about 6 years with my 3 kids.
Okay.
And then I took the tests when I started back to work
Okay.
after that.
So you're at plus or minus 12 years or so.
Yeah. I don't think you could take them after a year or two where I was living or at that time. I totally would have if I'd been able to, but I don't think it was an option.
Okay. Awesome. So let's see. It looks like all of you have taken the vignettes. Jonathan, how did you handle them?
The key thing was to utilize the practice software. That was crucial because as most people who've taken 4.0 know, it is a very bumbling program. And if you haven't spent, and what I typically did was I spent at least half of that last review week just practicing and going through the vignette, and especially too with schematic design being the first exam and the first set of vignettes. I took a good week and a half practicing that software. That was crucial.
Mm-hmm. Debbie, how about yourself?
I practiced each vignette 3 or 4 times just to make sure that I understood how to use all the tools and which tools would help me get to the solution faster. And then I transitioned to 5.0 because I hated the vignette.
Jake, how about you?
Yeah, I actually liked the vignettes. I felt that the multiple choice was more of a challenge, but I also, similar to Debbie, I took 3 stabs at it. The first one was just familiarizing yourself with the tools. The program is pretty consistent throughout each of the tests, just figuring out the crux of the problem and what the tools are. So the first pass through, just familiarizing yourself. The second pass was timed. Usually, I like to procrastinate, so I was doing that the night before, but not studying multiple choice. And then the morning of, as I was having my morning coffee, I would just kind of go through it again, timed, before I went to the testing center.
Awesome. Yeah, I like the timed bit. I think that's smart. I did write, by the way, on the slide here that you're crazy, that you actually like the vignettes.
It's a rare breed, very rare breed.
The software is not very effective, but you know it's drawing still.
Totally, yeah. Jake, maybe I'll stay with you. Did you leverage any sort of groups or resources to help you prepare?
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with AIA Central Valley and the Black Spectacles course that we've been, I guess, facilitating for a couple years now. So I was part of the first generation of that group where we met on Saturdays, watched the videos, and just had basically just Q&A after each video. Some of them were pretty self-explanatory, so we didn't talk too much, but that was our Saturdays, and then sometimes we'd meet up in groups throughout the week just to go through flashcards or, go through questions that we had.
How about you, Debbie?
I had a similar AIA-sponsored group that used Black Spectacles, and they would meet and have presenters go over the different topics. I wasn't able to make it to all of the meetings because of things with kids. I did go, I think I only made it to one, but I had access to the Black Spectacles. Also, our library had all of the Kaplan books, and I bought the Ballast book, so I used all of those resources for studying. And by being in the AIA group, I met another person who was going through the test at the same time, and we kind of met up and have kept track of each other's progress. And I think that was really great, just to have somebody who was going through it to talk to and to cheer on through it.
Awesome. Jonathan, how about yourself?
Well, because at the time that I was taking my exams, I was really pretty much the only one taking the exam and my time period. So I wasn't really studying with anyone else particularly, but luckily our firm does have a library of study material, and because I'm on the education committee for our firm as well, I made sure that we had up-to-date material. So I would check out those. Also, I would go online and utilize the Black Spectacles mock exam videos and things of that nature as well. And pretty much a lot of blogs and any other kind of published notes that people, could give in terms of strategy and ways of looking at the material. So I pretty much just kind of picking out things from everywhere, and also too utilizing NCARB's practice exam and going through the list of resources that they pull questions from, and actually going through and purchasing some of those books that they recommend and going through those as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. It was really interesting when you realize that, a lot of the when they explained to us how they craft their questions, they explained that for every single question that they put out there in the exam, they need to have some sort of authoritative resource that backs it up. And so a lot of in most of the cases, those books are the ones that they list on their website. So that's a good suggestion. I think that's maybe a little tip for everyone to take those books seriously. Although, admittedly, they're very long. So
maybe use them for reference.
Very, very long.
Yeah.
And you can't go through all of it, but at least try to pick, through some of it as much as you can.
All right. So, Debbie, I'm going to go with you on this one here. Where and when did you make time to study? And I'm actually going to pull a question here from Brian on GoToWebinar here, who asked, he'd be curious how Debbie studied with kids. He's saying he also has small children and has a hard time finding the time and the energy to get the studying done. So can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, my kids usually go to bed between 7 and 8, so I would study in the evenings from 7 or 8 o'clock to 10 or 11. And before I started studying, this was the time I had set aside for painting. So it was already a very rigorously held schedule that I had blocked out for painting time. So it was pretty easy to switch that time from painting time to studying time. I kind of had to completely give up painting for a period because it was too hard to switch back and forth between studying and painting. I always would paint instead of studying, so I had to just give it up. So it wasn't an option for me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Give up those hobbies. How about you, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to have to sacrifice some hobbies, especially if you want to get the exams done in a reasonable amount of time. I typically, because I was trying to keep with the 4 weeks on most of the exams, would study for about 5 days a week, but not more than probably 2 hours for most of those days, with the exception of course, on Saturdays when we'd meet up for the Black Spectacles videos. But I'm a firm believer in repetition, so I would always bring flashcards with me to work, and then on my lunch break, I found that was an easy 1 hour right there, just to go through flashcards, just for general knowledge, and then at home, I might spend an hour or two going through more in-depth, focused study material.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like how I studied when I did this. It's amazing. You add up the 20 minutes in the morning, 45 minutes during lunch, 30 minutes on your commute. It does all add up.
Yeah. Especially just keeping the information constantly in your head, and you're always thinking about it, so you don't have the tendency to forget, oh, what did I study last Tuesday? It's always in your mind. And I just to expand on that a bit too, I think the more resources that you have access to, even if it's free sample questions online, just utilize everything you can just to see how NCARB is testing your decision-making process. And also each question that you come across is just one more avenue for research.
Awesome. Jonathan, how about yourself?
Yeah, so after work, I would make time to where I would go to the gym for an hour and a half or so, and then after that, I would find my local Starbucks and basically close it down. And that was 5 days a week, about 2.5, 3 hours a day. And then Saturday and Sunday, because obviously there's a lesser work commitment, those were my actual long days. So I would spend about 5, 6, or sometimes up into 8 hours at Starbucks on Saturday and Sunday, especially for those exams like structures and building systems. And also for those harder exams too, I would take my lunch break and use that hour as well to go through the exam material as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I think it's maybe worth noting is that it also is, if you guys are all working while you're doing this, it's important that the folks who you work with, they know that you're studying, because they'll give you a little bit of space, they'll give you a little bit of leniency, perhaps. And so, studying during work is important, I think, to take that time, and also just to make it known that I'm studying for my exams, just so everyone knows,
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Debbie, I just have
And
to
you can
say,
ask questions too.
Yeah, Debbie, I just have to say on GoToWebinar, everyone's asking about your story. I think about 7 or 8 people here have just said that they also have kids and they're having a hard time finding motivation after a long break, or just finding time because of the way children take over your life. Do you want to add anything else to that? There's a lot of questions and comments about that.
Once I decided I definitely wanted to get it done and made it a priority, I think it was easier. When they were very little, I didn't even try to pursue it. So I just at one point decided, well, I definitely want to do this. I'd actually had dreams about not finishing school. Like somehow I had never gotten my high school diploma, and I'd skipped on to college, and then I didn't finish college for some reason. And since I started studying for the exams, I haven't had that dream anymore, and it was all about not having finished something.
Mm-hmm.
So I just had to decide I definitely want to get this done, and then set aside, make that time to do it. And it is harder to work around the schedule of kids who have evening activities that you have to do, and weekends are busy. But I just gave myself enough time to get each test studied for before I did it, which is why I didn't usually schedule them until a week or 2 ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to get myself into a situation where I wasn't prepared when I took the test.
Mm-hmm.
Taking the test, I never felt like I could have been prepared because they always shocked me with how hard they were. But I just, made it a priority during that time. And then I usually did take a few weeks off kind of in between just to relax with the kids a little bit more, but not too much because then I'd get out of the habit.
Mm-hmm. Generally, how old were your kids when you decided to do this? They're 3 or 4, or they're 8 or 9?
My kids are 4, 6, and 8.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, good. Well, I think that should give some folks some ideas. I think you set yourself some reasonable expectations. You gave yourself some breaks in between, and you just decided you were going to do it. And I have to say, Lonnie just noted in our comments here that they had the same dream, that they did not get their master's degree. So you're not alone. Awesome. All right, so let's, Jonathan, based on your experience, how would you recommend firms handle licensure? Not every firm handles it the same way, about reimbursing, providing materials, et cetera, et cetera. How do you think they should, or even recognizing folks when they do get licensed, et cetera, et cetera. How do you think they should do it?
Yeah, well, I think, licensure for the firm in general is a significant, and it's an investment, one, and it's also a selling point too, because obviously the more licensed professionals you have on your staff, I think the better you are. So, and for the firms to kind of acknowledge that importance, I think is crucial, because it gives you motivation to keep going, knowing that there are people who are cheering you on. And so creating an environment, I think, where licensure is important and is valued is, I think, highly crucial. And that's not to say that, not everyone has the ambition of being registered. But I think for those who do have that ambition for whatever reason, I think that firms need to acknowledge that the importance of that decision, because there's so many people from starting school through to practice who don't make it. And to have kind of made it through all the rigor of schools and all the rigor of internship and all the rigor of studying for the exams and finally making it, for firms to acknowledge how important that is a huge deal. And luckily, I work for a firm that actually did convey how important that was for them. They took me out for dinner, and some of them actually, bought me a bottle of wine and stuff like that, which made me feel really good. So it made me feel as though that my struggle actually mattered to them.
Yeah, I had to tell you, I speak to some folks who work at firms where they they don't provide any resources, they don't provide any motivation. Maybe one of you will tell a similar story, I don't know, but and it's always shocking to me that they don't sort of see the value there. In any case, Jake, tell me about your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame to hear that firms don't support it so actively. I think when you, in the grand scheme of things, $210 per exam, I don't know what they've gone to at 5.0, but it's really a drop in the bucket in terms of income. So
Yep.
$1,400 for all exams, I mean, that's pretty small. So I think the way we handle it's really good, paying for the exams, but then also we provide paid time off for taking the exams, and that helps too. You don't have to worry about scheduling it on the weekend. I always like to take them on Fridays, take the day off, and then I can relax over the weekend. And at the emerging professionals group in our office, what we started doing recently, just to raise awareness and provide motivation for people to get going on their exams, is when somebody passes, we'll post it on our intranet and just congratulate them, and it provides a good group of people studying.
Awesome. Debbie, how about you?
Well, the firm I worked for, they did give paid time off for taking the exams, but they didn't cover the cost or have any resources. And it kind of made it hard. I've since switched firms, largely because of the lack of sort of support behind being licensed, and recognizing that as a step forward and being willing to give more responsibility. I was in a very small firm, and so it was me and an architect and a draftsperson, and the architect couldn't see any room for handing over any actual architect responsibilities. So there wasn't room for me to grow there. So I felt switching firms into a place where they were really excited for me to be licensed was just such a welcome relief and a nice change. So it's been exciting to be here where, they put more emphasis on it, and they support me through it.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. There are a ton of people on this webinar right now, and many who will listen to this later. If you're working at a firm that doesn't support you on your path to licensure, there's a lot of firms out there who will. And I don't know, maybe that's our public service announcement for today. So don't feel like it's like that everywhere. There are a lot of places that do support aspiring architects. Okay, I think Jonathan, you're going to be great. This is going to be great. We're going to have very different opinions maybe on this. Jonathan, I think you said you took this right after about a year out of school. Tell me about your thoughts about taking the exam right afterward.
Well, my situation is a bit unique because when I graduated from college, it was during the recession. It was 2009. And so it took me, 4 or 5 years to actually find a job in architecture. And so with that mindset of already being behind as it is, further behind that I wanted to be in life, I decided that it's kind of like now or never. So I need to get it done. And so that's why I decided, okay, I gave myself the year. I've got some experience under my belt in terms of practice, which I think is you need in order to pass to answer some of the questions correctly on the exam. So once you have that year out of your way, go ahead and struggle through it and finish the exams. And I gave myself a deadline to be licensed at 30. And I made a sticky note, a big sticky note, put it on my computer for everybody to see. And I held myself to that standard. So, and also I know, as many people have said as well, that the longer you wait, the harder it is because, as older you get more responsibilities, whether it's work, life, or whatever. And so it was truly a kind of now or never time for me.
Yeah, I really like that about making it public. I was recently listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast, and I can't remember the name of the website. Maybe somebody, if you can think of this, you can put it into the GoToWebinar notes. But there's some website where you can essentially, you can find a friend. You can donate. You can say, I want to pass the ARE before I'm 30. You put $500 into an escrow account through this website, and then your friend is the only person who can allow you to get the money. And if you fail, then something like they donate the $500 to like the worst charity that you would never ever want to donate to. So it really holds you accountable. I thought it was pretty awesome. Okay, Debbie, how about you? What do you think about taking the exam right after grad? Because you can do that now. You can take it right after you graduate. Does that sound crazy to you, or sound like really smart?
I think I would have if I'd been able to. It sounds like a good plan. It would have been easier to avoid some of the life things that came up with kiddos if I had taken it earlier. I did learn some stuff while working that I think gave me more experience in order to have a broader understanding of some of the things. But also studying for them is, I think, a great way to develop your career because you go over some material that you touched on in school but may not have gotten into as deeply. So, I don't know.
Yeah. What do
I
you
didn't
think?
have the option, so.
Yeah. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, like we talked briefly earlier, I think taking it right out of school or give yourself a year or two just to get a little bit of experience before you're taking them. But it seems like with 5.0, with what I've seen, they've created a more holistic approach to the test. So almost seems like having more experience may be better. That's just my brief experience with some of the questions I've seen. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's good to take them early so that you use them as a learning tool for your career. I think that was a good approach.
Yeah, I wonder. This is an interesting question. Debbie, I wonder what your thoughts here, since you have taken a couple of the 5.0 exams. Do you feel like it does require more experience or not so much?
I think it probably does require more experience and more of a wider view of the practice of architecture, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the things I felt sort of encompassed more of my experience in the field than maybe the 4.0 did, which seemed to be more specific sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation.
Especially working through the code and in the now I'm blanking on what they're called, where they have the group of documents that you look through.
The case studies?
On the case studies, especially on the case studies, because that's how you work in the office. You've learned to go through those things and find the information that you need. And I felt that was very much what we do. And so having done it a lot in the office, I found it fairly easy to find the information I needed on those. And I heard a lot of people sort of run out of time on those or take a very long time. And I don't know if that was because they had less experience in an office than I did, or just something about the way they process the information.
Mm-hmm.
But I did think it was helpful on that.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense. I think just going through a couple of projects in your experience would probably lend itself to the types of questions they're probably asking through the exam. So I think it makes sense, at least to me. So I would say we've maybe talked a little bit about this one. Let me think here for a second. I'm going to skip this question, actually. And one of my favorite questions here, I'm going to kind of call an audible here. One of my favorite questions is, after you take your exam or when you pass the exam, what are the things that you did? What is a ritual that you had after you took the exam or after you passed them? Jake, I'm gonna ask you.
Yeah, so I have a lot of recent licensed architects in our office, so they know what I'm going through. And like I said earlier, I always tested on Fridays. So I took the day off, and then when I was done, we'd all meet up for beers. And that was kind of the breath of air when I was finished. And then that would kick off my week break before I scheduled my next one. I think that just forgetting about the tests for a week is just crucial. So that would be my advice. Just give yourself a little bit of time before you sit down and get burnt out.
Okay. Jonathan, how about you?
Well, I would take my exams on a Monday, and at first when I did it, I would do my exams and do a half day at work. But then I realized I was brain dead at work, and so I stopped doing that. So I started taking the whole day off, and so I would go to my exam, and after I took my exam, I would basically go home, take a nap, and then get up and then have whatever dinner food I wanted and have a glass or two or three of wine and just relax that day.
Awesome. Seeing a trend here. Debbie, how about yourself?
Most of the tests I was able to take the whole day off afterwards. I always took them first thing in the morning because I like to get them done with and not worry about them through the day. So I enjoyed having the rest of the afternoon off and going home and spending the time with the kids and getting to help, get the dinner on and everything. And then there were a few tests where I did have to go back to work afterwards.
Oh,
and
boy.
on those, I treated myself to an extra long lunch and then walked around an art gallery and didn't worry about getting back to work too quickly.
Awesome.
All right.
I was going to say, if you told me you took a nap, I would have said, are you crazy? You took a nap. Parents can't have naps. I have a couple kids myself, so I know. So
They were all at school.
I
What
know.
could possibly
Yeah,
happen?
you're right. That's a good point. Awesome. All right,
And
let's
it
see.
would be a real treat indeed.
Yeah. What would you guys say? And we've had this question come through. A number of folks here have asked some variation of this question. Suggestions for keeping up your morale during the process, especially, and I'll lead. I didn't pass all my exams. I failed one of them along the way. So especially, if you fail one of your exams, what are some suggestions for keeping up your morale during the process? Jonathan, I'll start with you.
Well, one, acknowledging the fact that it's okay to fail. Don't beat yourself up because nothing in the world. It's not like you can't take it again. You may have to pay for it again, but it's not the end of the world. Just keep going. But also, too, just think of the fantastic feeling that you'll have when it's over and done. You have that chunk of your life back. Because it does take an emotional toll on you. And giving yourself a mental break if you do need it. If you do need to take a week off between studying for your exams between them, that's fine. Give yourself that time. But also, too, make sure you find people in your life to keep you accountable and to give you that emotional support. And luckily, I had friends and coworkers to do that.
Yeah, I think that's an important one. Those friends and coworkers to kind of keep supporting you along the way. That's really good. Jake, how about you?
Yeah, I think having a support network is really important, even if it's when you're getting done, obviously not divulging too much information about what you saw on the test, but just having somebody to vent about the process, because nobody likes taking those tests. They're always miserable. So just having somebody to vent to is important, and just kind of having fun with it. You're learning a lot about a career that obviously we're all very passionate about. So just, take it for what it is, just a learning experience, and I think it's less painful that way.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I like that a lot. Okay, Debbie, how about you?
I did like studying for the tests because it was information that I was learning. I hated taking the tests. It was every time I was convinced I had failed when I went out. I always had to have the attitude that if I did fail, then I'll know what I'm getting into better next time. So I should be able to take it on better. So I kind of just looked at it that way. Like the learning new stuff, I have no problem with that. That's fun. It's hard to make the time, but it was fun to refresh and learn new stuff. And then I just always told myself, okay, if you failed, you'll know better next time what material you should have studied and what to take on.
Yeah, I think, and this is one thing that, Mike Newman and I talk about a lot on these podcasts is don't forget that actually one of the best ways to study for the exam is to just take it. In fact, he often tells this story when he does these workshops and he has 100 people in a room, he says, if you guys were all MBA students, half of you would just go take all the exams without studying at all, knowing that just based on statistics, you'd probably pass 2 or 3 of them and then could just focus on the remaining ones. Some folks might think that's reckless, but on the flip side, it is a great way to study because you really do kind of get a sense of what it's like and things along those lines. Okay. Any other thoughts anyone has on this one? All right. We have a huge list of questions, but I think we've gotten through most of them, actually. Let me look here real quick. I guess this is kind of an interesting one from Allison. She asks, what would you do differently as a part of your test-taking process? Or maybe after you failed one of the exams, what did you figure out that you needed to do differently? So Jake, maybe I'll ask you that question.
Yeah, so I actually failed my first test, and I felt miserable, and I think I didn't include this in my just over a year, but I think I took like 4 months and was just depressed, not really, but a little bit. And I studied for that one. I took PPP, I studied for about 2 months, realizing that I only really studied for about a month, but that's when I adjusted my 4 to 6 weeks. Actually, I was probably more than 2 months on the first pass, but getting more resource material was critical in that change, and then the time frame as well, just making it more focused.
Okay. Jonathan?
Yeah, I guess what I would have done differently is to make sure that I went into the studying with a cohesive plan. And again, that takes time as well. Once you get the format down, it's fine. But actually, the whole thing about me breaking down my weeks of studying based upon the percentages of how the material was covered by the NCARB guidance, it took me about 3 exams to kind of figure that out. So just going in there with a very solid plan, and also too giving myself a bit more time, maybe for my first exam, maybe another week and a half or so, to kind of regain a study method, I think would have been a lot more helpful because, being at school for several years, you kind of forget how to study. So giving yourself time to redevelop those skills, I would have given myself a bit more time if I could do it all over again.
Okay. And Debbie?
If I could do something differently, I may have started when my youngest was just a newborn and I was on maternity leave because I feel like I definitely had more time then.
That's interesting. Okay. Tell me more about that. What do you mean? When you're on maternity leave, you don't have any time. You have that baby, it's crying. You don't have any time. Give me a break.
When I had my first kid, I felt like I had absolutely no time when that one was a baby.
Right.
But then by my third, I realized, babies don't really take up so much time because I've got 2 others that take up
That's right.
a lot more time than the baby did.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great perspective. That's great perspective.
If I had a change of perspective and could look at it and realize that there was time, I would have done it then. But at that point, I thought I had to sit there and hold the baby all the time, which was wonderful. And I wouldn't really give that up. So I don't know what I would change.
That's awesome. And lastly here, I've gotten a couple questions about this. So Debbie, you're on the hot seat here about the transition to 5.0. You did it. You passed. Do you recommend making the jump to 5.0? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I really like the 5.0 tests better. I felt like they grouped the material into more of a realistic way that we work. I liked all of the new testing types of questions.
Mm-hmm.
The case studies are very real to what we do. The point and click, it just works from my brain well, in a way that added to the test, like the 4.0 being all multiple choice, and then the vignettes. I just didn't think that the vignettes tested what we actually do. They just seem like some strange foreign thing where you have to understand the software more than testing your knowledge of what you're doing on most of them. So I really liked the 5.0. I did not like waiting 3 or 4 months to get my results because I was one of the first few to take it. But now that you only have to wait a day or so, I would definitely recommend it.
Awesome. Well, Jared Zern would be very happy to hear you say that, and that we're sharing that feedback. That's really awesome to hear. I know they were, a lot of people I think were maybe a little intimidated by it, and so hearing your feedback I think is really great.
It was a little worrying since you couldn't take it back after you transitioned, but I was very happy that I did it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, I'm going to go and end it there. I'm going to thank Jonathan Stiles, Jake Elliott, Debbie Bird. Thank you guys so much for sharing your approach and your feedback, and all the details about how you did it. And congratulations on passing your exams. We need one of those like DJ buttons where we can have like a round of applause playing right now, but we don't have one right now. So imagine that's happening right now. So thank you guys so much. If you guys would like, all you folks who are listening in, if you'd like to attend our next ARE live broadcast, where we'll focus on the programming and analysis mock exam, just go to blackspectacles.com/podcast to register to attend. And just like today, you'll have a chance to ask questions and share your answers to that mock exam during the session for live feedback. To learn more about our ARE exam prep curriculum, go to blackspectacles.com, where you can try out any of the free course videos that some of these folks have talked about using. If you want your boss to pay for your membership, be sure to visit blackspectacles.com/firms to learn more about our firm memberships for firms of any size. And then for those of you who are ready to start preparing for the ARE right now, and if you're already an AIE member, you can use coupon code HOW51617YT to get a 15% discount for the entire duration of your ARE exam prep membership. And then finally, tomorrow we'll send you an email follow-up about today's live broadcast, so please let us know what you think. Share any suggestions you may have. I promise we'll read every word that you write and use them to tune our next episodes. So thanks for watching.